this video, we're going to be discussing bootstrap carousels. So a bootstrap carousel is simply a slideshow component for cycling through elements or images, like a carousel. So Bootstrap has some built-in CSS and some JavaScript already within the classes that will allow you to really quickly and easily code a nice sliding carousel. So it is important to note that you have to add an active class to one of your images in your carousel, usually your first one. It doesn't have to be the first one, but usually for organization's sake, it's your first one has to be active in order for any of the images to show. So let's go ahead and start building our carousel. The first thing we need to do is create the outer div. So the outer div is going to have an ID, and this is whatever you want it to be. So we can call it like test carousel. And then we're going to give it a class of carousel slide. And that's going to have the images slide. There's other classes. You can have them fade as well. And then we're going to add the data ride, which is data bootstrap ride. If you're on an older version, it may just be data ride and not data bootstrap ride. That's a new semantic. And that will be carousel. And this is going to be your outer div. I like to mark it in my own notes as end of outer carousel div, because there is an inner and an outer div for your carousel. So this is the outer one. So open that up so I can work with inside of it, and I'm going to create my inner div. And so we're going to create the inner div. It is going to have a class of carousel inner. And then I'm going to mark this one as well. End of inner carousel div. Just for my own bookkeeping. And then I'm going to work within that. So inside my inner div here, I'm going to create another div so you can see why you're going to want to mark these. I'm going to create a div, and I'm going to give this a class of carousel item. And I'm going to make this one the active item so that anything else will appear. The rest of my divs will not have that active class to it. I only need one. So inside that div, now I can place my image. So I'm going to create an image tag, img. I'm going to set the source to, I'm just going to grab some stuff. I don't have a proper folder set up, so I'm just going to grab a couple images that are hanging out on my desktop where I have this saved. So you're going to see some really weird images popping up. Image1.jpg. I'm going to set the class to dblock, which will make it a block element, and the width to 100. So this is going to go 100% of the frame. So that's important for sizing. Please note that the height of your images, if you don't size them properly, they will always be different. So two ways to do that. You can, and the easiest way in my opinion, is to size all your images to be the same size in Photoshop before you place them into your carousel. There are other coding tricks that you can do. You can write special code to make them a certain height within your code. However, I feel like that's a lot more work when Photoshop, it just takes some time to change the size of your images, and then they'll just be correct without having to do fancy code. An alt text in here. Say, I'm going to just call mine carousel image. I'm not even sure what it is. And there's my image tag. So let's go ahead and save that, and then we can see there is my image popping in here. Obviously there's only one and it's not doing anything. So let's go ahead and bring in some more images. So I just need to copy this little chunk and change the images out. So I'm just going to copy that little chunk here, paste it below. I'm going to remove that active class, and I'm going to change the picture so we can see something else. And I hope those are different. Yep. And then, so I'll call that alt text carousel image 2. Obviously, we're only going to use good naming for your alt text, so it makes sense. However, carousels themselves are not very accessible for people using assistive technology. So if you're really trying to make something for people using assistive technology, carousels may not be the way to go. And then we'll call this one 3. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And our carousel should be sliding. There it goes. There, it's sliding. I may have the same image twice. I'm not quite sure. It looks a little different. So be aware that if you hover over this image when it is in your browser, it is not going to change. So when that's kind of a built-in thing that it will not keep sliding if you hover your cursor over it. So there I can see that my carousel is sliding. So I can add controls to this because right now I can't click to the next image. So there are some built-in controls with Bootstrap, so you can add a previous and a next. So let's go ahead and program those into our carousel here. So I'm going to move outside my inner carousel. I'm going to create a button. And I'm going to give it a class of carousel control prev, which stands for previous. I'm going to say that has a type of button because it is a button. And then I need to target the ID that I've set for this carousel. So I'm going to do data bootstrap target is, and then I need to target this ID that I wrote. So test carousel in my case. It would be whatever you wrote for your ID. And I need to make sure that I'm putting that # hashtag, whatever you want to call it, to target that ID. So making sure that those match up. It is case specific, so make sure that you have that as well. And then data slide is prev. So that's going to go to the previous. There we go. And then inside that button, I need to have the little kind of caret icon show up. So I'm going to create a span tag, and it's going to have a class of carousel. This is pretty long. Carousel control prev icon. That's pretty long. And then I will end that span. So when I save that, there my little caret popped up. And I can test that, and I can see that that's going back and forth. Wonderful. Now I need to make the next icon. So that one's the previous one. I need to make the next. So to save myself some typing, I'm going to copy that whole little button tag right here. I'm going to paste right below. But then I need to change all the prevs to next. So that's kind of important, because otherwise it's really not going to do anything, because all you're doing is the prevs. So you'd have two previous buttons. So this is now next instead of previous. It is a button. It is targeting that carousel. its slide is to the next. Otherwise, you would have a right indicator and it would just go back. So next. And then I want the icon for next. Save that. And then I can go next, and I can go previous. And you see that because my images are different sizes, you can see that they are jumping in the carousel. These little indicators are jumping because they're going to center to the height of that image. So you want to make sure, again, that your images are all set to a correct height within Photoshop, that they're all the same. It'll save you just a ton of heartache. All right, now we can add some indicators on the bottom to show how many slides are in here. So I'm going to add those indicators in here as well. So I'm going to navigate to the top of my div for my, so prior to, in between my outer div and my inner div, I need to open that up, and I'm going to put in my indicators. So I'm going to create a new div, and I'm going to give that a class of carousel indicators. And you may want to mark that again for yourself. So end of indicators. You can get a lot of divs in Bootstrap. I'm going to open that up and I will place my indicators in here. Within this div of carousel, with the class of carousel indicators, I'm going to go ahead and create a button. And I'm going to give it a type of button. And I'm going to set the data target to be my carousel, test carousel. So that will look like data Bootstrap target. And again, if you're working in a slightly older version of Bootstrap, it will just be data target, not data Bootstrap target, equals. And then I'm going to call back this test carousel again. So # test carousel. And then I'm going to write the data slide. So data Bootstrap slide 2. And that is going to equal 0 because JavaScript is a base 0 language. So you start counting on 0 and not on 1. You give it the class of active. So it finds that active class that we set to the first image. I will end that button. So now I can copy that because I have 3 pictures. This indicator is for the first one. I need to do 2 and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, paste it below. So I now have 3, and then I need to change this a little bit. So then I have the slide to 1 and then a slide to 2. For my 3 images that I have. Remember, it starts 0, 1, 2. And then I need to remove the class of active because we only have 1 active class on that first image. So then I need to take these out then so that it's appropriately moving to that. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to test it over here and see if my indicator's there. I see my indicators are showing up, so I can slide, and that slides to 1. I can also click on these, and that takes me to the correct image. So now I have a couple different ways to move through my carousel slider. To add captions to your images within your carousel, you're going to use the class of carousel caption, and those will go within each of the images within your carousel down here. Whoops, I gotta make sure I'm in the correct spot here. There we go. I have my div with my class of carousel item. So this would be that first image that I'm using, that image active. So I'm going to work within this div so that it is tied in with that image. So after the image tag, but before the end of this div that contains that image, I'm going to create another div. So I'm working within here, create another div, and I'm going to give that the class of carousel caption. And then inside of that, I'm going to go ahead and write some of my text. So I'm going to create an H5. You can create whatever size you would like. And I will say first slide caption. And then I'm going to create a paragraph tag. I'm going to just say this is some caption text. Save that, and I'll slide back to my first image here. And there is my caption for my first slide. So I can duplicate that and repeat that on a couple of my other slides just so you can see how it changes. So I'm going to grab this whole little div here. I'm going to copy everything in there. And I'll paste that within my other images. I'll call it second class slide caption. And third. Save that. Let's do a quick refresh on that. And there you see there's all of my captions within the slides. So it's worth noting how these appear. You can style your captions within your CSS, so it goes past this default styling. I recommend doing that within your CSS. You're just going to call those carousel captions, just because by default this is white Helvetica. But you can see how you can add some very nice information to your carousel pretty quickly with using the caption. If you would like your carousel to fade instead of slide in between, you can add the within the div, your outer div for your carousel, you can add in the class of carousel fade. So right now we have carousel slide, and next to that you're going to type in carousel fade. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then you can see that as these go back and forth instead of sliding, it now fades in between each of the slides. So that's another built-in feature that pretty quickly you can program into your carousel within the Bootstrap framework. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next one.